everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Mallory and this video is going to be about things that I would do differently for my next birth and things that I would keep the same. So if you are interested in videos on this topic about pregnancy, motherhood, healthy living, how to have a healthy baby, and all of that kind of stuff, and also some gardening and homesteading kind of things that I'm just now starting to work into my channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. If you are new, like I said, my name is Mallory and I am a military wife, a registered nurse, and a mom to 2 boys. 2 under 2, in fact. And this is Gus, so he's our newest addition to the family. And also we have Max, who is almost 21 months old. He's almost, actually this one will be 2 months old tomorrow. I wanted to do this video as kind of like a post-game show of my birth, which I had mentioned in my birth story about him. I had an unmedicated VBAC. So Max was an unexpected C-section and then he was a VBAC, and so it was a great birth. However, there are things that I would change or do differently if, God willing, we have a 3rd child, which we really hope we can have a 3rd child. So I do have my list of things that I would do differently and then keep the same or do more of that I did with his birth. So, all right, so the first thing that I would do is to label my essential oils for labor. So if you watched my hospital bag video, which you can find in the cards if you haven't, I showed you guys that I put a pouch together of a bunch of different essential oils with very specific uses. And when I'm in a normal state of mind, I can look at an oil or, you know, or think of what I'm dealing with and say, okay, I need that oil or I need that blend of oils. But when you're in labor and you're getting into transition and you're really in the thick of it, you just don't have the presence of mind to be like, oh, let me go through my essential oil pouch and decide which one is best for how I'm feeling right now. All you can do is say, I'm feeling nauseous, I'm feeling whatever. If your husband is very, you know, knowledgeable about these things, then he could go and get what you need. But if he's not, then he definitely will need some coaching. So what I plan on doing is bringing all these essential oils, but having a list and saying, okay, for nausea, this is what I would want. For back labor, this is what I would want. For, you know, when I'm in transition and feeling that exhaustion, or in transition and feeling anxiety, or in transition and feeling like I can't do it anymore. Now that I've had the full spectrum of labor and gone from beginning to end unmedicated, and I know exactly how it goes, now I have a better idea of what I might experience in another birth. The second thing is also has to do with my husband. So beforehand, I would practice and communicate to Mark what laboring and birthing positions that I would like to try. In my mind, again, not having gone through the full spectrum of labor, not having had experienced transition in particular before, I just didn't realize that I just wouldn't have the mental strength to say, okay, I want to try this position. And so I had not really communicated to Mark exactly what I would like to try. I just assumed that I would take the initiative and say, you know, oh, hold on, the pest control is here. So when you're in the thick of it, you just do not have, especially if it's been a long labor. So by the time I hit transition, I was about, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 hours into labor. It was a little while. And so I was getting tired. I mean, you get tired in labor unless you have a super, you know, precipitous labor, like that's only a couple hours, but you get tired, and especially if it's overnight, which both of my labors have started in the evening, going overnight. And so for my next one, I'm going to assume that I'm going to start laboring in the evening. That just seems to be what my body does. And so when you're laboring overnight, like obviously you don't know if you're going to go into labor that night. And so you're up during the day and then you're up all night. So you get tired. So I need somebody else, and also not just to him, but communicate to the staff, or have Mark communicate it to the staff at the hospital on what positions I want to try, because then I can say, you know, then they can ask me, do you want to try this? Or I could even tell them, you know, if I've been in a position for a long time, I need you to tell me you're going to try this position. Like if I tell somebody that this is what I want, and like if I'm not doing it on my own, I need you to make me do it. I think that's what I would need, is somebody to say, let's try squatting, or let's try walking, or whatever, and I'm going to do it. Like, I mean, if I fight back and say no, I mean, they can't force me, but I would have liked somebody in Gus's birth and Gus's labor to tell me, to suggest things like, let's try this instead, you know? The third thing that kind of goes along with that is to not give birth in the lithotomy position unless for some reason, like, I don't know, that's just how I'm positioned when I'm pushing him out. But I don't plan on giving birth in that position. So that's the traditional position that they put you in the hospital historically, where you're leaning back and your feet are in the stirrups. That's just how I ended up, because they had broken my water. My doctor had broken my water. And so I was laying down and then I was throwing up. And so I was kind of like elevated a little bit, but still leaning back. And so I didn't really feel like moving. Again, that fatigue had really set in. But I do not want to give birth in that position again, because I believe that that was one of the biggest factors in why I had a 3rd-degree tear. I'm doing really well, like there's no complications from it, but you know, it's not fun to get a 3rd-degree tear. It's really bad. Another thing that I will do differently with regards to pushing and like giving birth is to use a warm compress on the perineum, which is supposedly supposed to help prevent tearing as well. So that's something else that I would request. Another thing, and this is huge, is I would like to do intermittent monitoring and not continuous monitoring. Even if that means signing a waiver and saying I'm not going to follow hospital policy. So at the hospital I gave birth at, their policy for VBAC moms was to be continuously monitored, and they did not have the option of being having a wireless monitor. So I had to be on the monitor for the entire labor. First of all, it was very, very uncomfortable. They're very tight bands, and when I have tight things across my stomach, it gives me gas pains. So in between contractions, I was having gas pains, so I wasn't pain-free between contractions. And I just didn't like it. It added to the discomfort of labor, and I didn't like not being able to go anywhere. And I think if I would have not been hooked up, I would have been more apt to walk around the room or try different things, because I wouldn't have felt inhibited. So if that entails, you know, if I give birth at this hospital again and they still consider me a VBAC, even though I've had a successful one already, I'm not really sure how that's handled. Like, once a VBAC, always a VBAC? I'm not really sure. If it means signing a waiver that says, yes, I know, you know, this is more risky to not be continuously monitored, but I'm choosing to be intermittently, like just like one time an hour, get me on the monitor one time an hour. It'll give me a chance to rest for a few minutes and then get off of it and keep moving. Because for me, that seems like that's what would keep labor going. Another thing that I would like to do is labor in the shower or the tub, or both. Again, that wasn't an option for me this time because of having to be continuously monitored. But before I went to the hospital, I did get in the shower at home, and that was so, I wanted to stay in there for like hours because it was so soothing. Just having the warm water going down my back, sitting in the tub would have been really nice, you know, as long as my water isn't broken. So I would really like to do that, because next time I don't want to be continuously monitored, so I won't have a monitor on. Going along with the theme of seeming like my body likes to go into labor in the evenings, I really would like to rest more in the weeks leading up to my due date. So also, my babies tend to be born very much on time. So Max was born on his due date, and he was born the day after his due date. I went into labor on my due date. Especially because I go into labor in the evening and labor overnight, I think it would help me if I was more rested. And you know, obviously you can't be like sleeping all day every day in those few days leading up to your due date, but just taking it easier and just resting more, taking more naps, and just not working myself so hard. So both of our kids, I have been pregnant in my 3rd trimester while we have moved and done big moves. Actually, with Max, we moved from Germany to California when I was 30 weeks. And with Gus, we moved from California to Kansas when I was 34 weeks. So anyway, so we'll see, you know, when I have our next child, you know, if it is during a move or not. But if it is not during a move, then I definitely will have the opportunity to rest more because I won't be unpacking and moving into a new place. Another thing that I would do differently is push on my own terms. So when I was pushing with Gus, I wanted to make sounds with my mouth. I wanted to have my mouth open and I wanted to scream and just make noise. But I was coached to close my mouth. It was coached pushing basically. And so they would say, okay, you know, during this next contraction, take a deep breath, hold it, and just push as much as you can. Take a breath quickly if you need it, but keep holding your breath. To me, that felt very unnatural to do it that way. And I just really wanted to scream basically because it was so painful and it took so much effort, and it felt like making noise helped me push more. So I would like to push that way next time. Okay, we're getting to near the end, but another thing I would like to do is to have a crucifix and or other religious articles on my tray table or somewhere in the room. I did bring a crucifix and a holy card with me to the hospital. I'm Catholic, and so that was important to me to do that, but in the midst of everything, I of course forgot. So I would like to remember to do that. I would like to try a TENS unit for pain management. So my in-laws recently visited us, and my mother-in-law had bought a TENS unit off of Amazon that she and my father-in-law use like for neck pain and, you know, just back pain, stuff like that. And I have heard that using a TENS unit in labor can be really helpful. So I want to get myself a TENS unit like actually now, because I think it would really help my nursing neck, as they call it, you know, neck pain from looking down and nursing. But I would like to also use it and try it out during labor because I think it could maybe help with the pain. Because next time I still do want to be unmedicated, and you know, if that's a natural thing that I could try for pain management. And so that was 10 things. So a bonus thing that I don't know if I would get to do, it depends on our circumstances. I would really love to at least look into the possibility of giving birth at a birth center with a midwife instead of the typical OBGYN at a hospital, or giving birth at a hospital with a midwife instead of an OB. So having midwifery, the midwifery model of care, and then giving birth at a hospital, like either one, either a birth center with a midwife or a hospital with a midwife. I just would really love to experience the difference between a traditional OB and a midwife that, you know, is more holistic minded, and it's just a different model of care, especially if you're giving birth at a birth center. I don't think I'm quite ready for home birth, and also our insurance TRICARE does not cover home birth, so it would be really hard to justify giving birth at home and paying thousands of dollars for, you know, a private midwife. If we somehow, you know, come into a lot of money, maybe my YouTube channel takes off and I'm making, you know, more than my husband every month, then maybe I would consider a home birth, because then finances wouldn't be an obstacle. But I think, you know, if I could see myself maybe one day getting there, you know, if we were financially independent and all of that. But for now, I would really like to try being cared for by a midwife. I just have heard such great things, that, you know, sometimes the appointments are longer and the midwife spends more time with you. And also, I've never had a female OBGYN, and I just think that you would have a different rapport with your provider if she's a female versus a male. Even though, you know, my doctors have been, you know, I haven't had any bad male doctors, but even though they deliver babies every day, they're still a man, and they will never, ever, ever know what it's like to give birth. They will never experience that pain. They will never experience, you know, the joy of carrying a child in their womb because they don't have one. And so I think it would be really neat to have a female as a provider, because chances are she is also a mom and knows exactly what giving birth is like. And I think that would just create an even like closer bond having a provider like that. So if you have given birth with a midwife as your provider, whether it's been in the hospital or a birth center, I would love to hear about your experience. So please leave your story in the comments below, or message me on Instagram or Life Wellness on the screen there, because I would love to hear stories. You know, I love hearing stories about birth, and would really like to get that other perspective. All right, so what are some things that I would like to do the same? So the first thing that I would like to do the same is listen to Gregorian chant during labor. So I talked about this in my birth story video, but I listened to Gregorian chant when I was, you know, really getting into transition, and it really helped me with focusing and meditating on the music, both during contractions and in between. So definitely want to do that. Another thing I'll do the same is have my birth quotes. So I had quotes written down and laminated from Catholic saints and from the Bible. And so I definitely would like to add to that collection as, you know, as time goes by. I mean, I can write them down and then add them to the list. But I would definitely like to use those in labor as well. I also would still like to just have a saline lock and not be hooked up to an IV unless it's medically necessary. Obviously, I would like to have my husband, Mark, there. He was a great coach, just a really good support emotionally and physically with doing counter pressure and just telling me that I could do it and just being there. So definitely want him there. Although, you know, with the military life, you just never know, like, if he's going to be deployed when I would be due. So when you're a military family and your husband is able to be there with you for the birth, that's a big deal. And like, I know that there's plenty of military wives out there that have given birth without their husbands, and probably some of them multiple times. So I do not take that for granted one bit. If Mark, for some reason, if he was deployed or something and couldn't be there, I'd want my mom for sure. And then finally, the last thing that I would do the same is go unmedicated. So like in my birth story, I said at first, after giving birth, I said, in my mind, I don't know if I want to go unmedicated ever again. I think maybe next time I'll get an epidural. But a couple of weeks later, I was like, no, I'm going to be unmedicated, like no question. So definitely want to do that again. Now that I've done it once, I have more confidence that I can do it again, and that I can have a better strategy in place for managing the pain, managing anxiety, or not really anxiety. I didn't really have anxiety, but it was more like feeling like I couldn't do it. So managing that feeling that inevitably comes up, and just managing how I handle the birth. So anyway, I hope this was interesting, and hopefully it gives you, sorry buddy, I keep startling him. Hopefully it gives you some ideas for your birth. You know, if you're preparing for labor and you want to know like firsthand experience on what to do and what not to do, there are my tips. So take that as my tips. Also, let me know below, if you have given birth before, what would you do differently and what would you do the same? So maybe I can get some other ideas as well. I look forward to the next time I'm pregnant and can give birth. So in the meantime, I don't think I said this at the beginning, but if you're new, make sure to subscribe, because I have more videos like this coming out about motherhood and life with 2 under 2. So make sure to subscribe. And in the meantime, you guys take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.